reinventing public relations, since reconnecting and reinventing is what this conference is all about. The number one question we get, besides the hashtag being where you can get the slides, fortunately we have put up wherecanIgettheslides.com. It actually works. Feel free to grab it at any time. Let's talk about the good old days to start. Public relations has not substantially changed since this, the first press release. Over 100 years old now. Out of curiosity, for the practitioners in the room, how many of you have sent out a news release in the last 30 days? Okay, almost every hand. How many of you sent out a news release in the last 7 days? I sent one out in the last 2 days. You were working on a weekend. How many of you feel like that's a great use of your time and money? Okay. The reality is public relations has not changed substantially in over 100 years. We're still pretty much doing the same thing. We send out news releases, we pick up the phone, we call people, and we try to get their attention, right? Some agencies even still operate like they're in the 1970s, and that's okay, because the drinks are really good. But how many of you feel like public relations is easier today than it was 10 years ago? Not a single hand in the room. Oh, one person. Awesome. The reality is today's landscape is significantly harder. If it feels like public relations, it feels like your job is getting harder, there's some good reasons why. Number one, what we consider the media, traditional media, is in rapid decline. This is Newspaper Death Watch, which is a real site. You can figure out to see which publications are going out of business or putting things up for yard sale. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The projections, the outlook for traditional news in the next 10 years, 2014 to 2024. The overall economy is expected to grow 7%, the red bar at the top. Media and communications workers in general, including people in this room, grows 4%. Reporters, correspondents, broadcast news analysts, -8, -9, -13%. This is why it feels like your job is getting harder. There was a statistic cited at the end of last year that there are 5 public relations professionals for every 1 traditional journalist now. So think about that. The 4 folks who are on the receiving end of our pitches are being swamped by 5 times the volume. The New York Times is laying off lots of people. So traditional media itself, the universe, is shrinking. But it's the content universe, because that's what we are. We are in the business of communicating content. The content business is going crazy. My friend and colleague Mark Schaefer talks about this idea of content shock. Today, thanks to mobile devices, thanks to the internet, thanks to digital, smartphones, and apps like crazy, we create more content than ever. Google has a database, one of the largest in the world, that tracks every news story since 1979. Someone graduating from college today was born in 1995. And in 1995, they saw 1.78 million news stories that year. Last year in 2015, there were 65 million news stories. Do you think your hits are more or less impactful than they were 21 years ago? Well, they've got 65 million other competitors for the same eyeballs. 36% year-over-year increases the last 2 years. This year, we are on tap for 88.4 million news stories. On top of that, in the old days, we had what? 3 TV channels, a radio station, and a local newspaper or 2? The number of apps available in the app stores is over 3 million apps. And these are apps like WhatsApp, and Kik, and WeChat, and Messenger, and Snapchat. Every single app out there takes away time and attention from our audience. We were working with a client who got a front page, beautiful print and digital front page Wall Street Journal story. Best coverage you could possibly imagine. You know how many people visited their website? Not bought something, visited their website. Only 8,000. That's it. So you would say to your client, look at this, hundreds and millions of impressions. 8,000 visitors. The client's like, so I could have done that with a Facebook ad. This is the amount of information appearing every second online. just since I've been standing up here talking about this. 184 blog posts, up 207 blog posts. 26 hours of video uploaded. You can't watch all this. You can't read all this. There's no way for us to consume it. This is what public relations is facing today. This avalanche of content. We are not being heard as professionals. What's the impact? Well, I took the Glassdoor reviews of 10 of the agencies in this room. I won't tell which ones. And I ran through a supercomputer, IBM's Watson, and I asked it, tell me what emotions are in people's Glassdoor reviews of their employers, past or present. Number one was anger. 56% of the reviews were anger. Now 4% were disgust. Look at joy. Joy is a negative exponent. It's so tiny that it's barely measurable. This is the impact to our profession, to our employees. Nobody's happy. Anger and disgust. According to the Knobscott Group, last year, voluntary and involuntary turnover in the PR industry reached 55%. So for any of us who are managing people, imagine, you don't have to imagine, you've got a revolving door, right? People are coming in and out all the time. Who are all these people? I walk in the office some days, I'll go out the office road for a week, I'll walk in, there's 5 people, like, where did you come from? Who are you? We measure on revenue. Revenue lost, we leave a lot of money on the table. This landscape is creating a revolving door of people, which creates a revolving door of clients, which creates a revolving door on revenue, and unfortunately most of the money is going out the door rather than in it. So how do we solve this? Because it's a fairly unpleasant way to start this conference. 3 ideas that you need to take into your practice or profession. Since 1898, E. St. Elmo Lewis created this idea of a funnel, right? The marketing funnel. How many people have heard of the marketing funnel? Out of curiosity, where does PR sit in the funnel? At the top? Okay, for the most part at the top. And St. Elmo Lewis's idea was not bad. The idea that people start with awareness, then interest, then decision, then action. It's not bad, except that consumers don't purchase things that way. How many of you ever bought something more that was costing more than $500? Car, house, mortgage, student loans, right? Sorry. When you made that purchase, did you follow a clean linear path from beginning to middle to end? Or did you talk to somebody, a significant other, a family member? Did you change your mind? When I go home at night, I have a 20-minute discussion with my wife and kids about what to have for dinner. There is no clean linear path from beginning to end. Go back and forth. Have a McDonald's, have a McDonald's. What about pizza? It's too greasy. What about this? And eventually we end up nothing. Marketers are frustrated by the fact that people take different paths. We're trying to get people to stay on the path. Just do what we tell you to do. Fill out this form, download this thing, talk to our salesperson, and then buy something. It doesn't work. The reality is the funnel as a way of understanding how people get from point A to point B is dead. And it's been dead for a while. It's been dead ever since the first smartphone came to market. What we have to change to are customer journeys. The idea that it isn't always a linear trip from point A to point B. Sometimes there's pauses, sometimes there's stops. How many of you have been in a shopping mall recently, the malls that are still open? How many of you have used your smartphone to shop for something while in the shopping mall? Did you check Amazon to see the low price? That's the customer journey. In a nutshell, that is how it works. Customer journeys are nothing more than figuring out that people do different things at different times, not in a sequential pattern, not at our convenience. But if we can change our thinking from top to bottom, do what we tell you to do, to let's figure out how people want us to communicate with them, we can be more successful. Google has created this incredible tool. You can search for on Google, search for path to online purchase from their data science division. They have created this wonderful tool that shows you the path that consumers take on average for many different industries, many different company sizes, many different locations, mostly English speaking. They get this data because they have convinced all of us to install Google Analytics on every website ever. And what happens when we use this tool is that all of these colored dots rearrange themselves based on how they see people interacting with them. Sometimes social media is the first touch point. Sometimes it's near the last. Sometimes email marketing is really important. Sometimes it's not. When you use this tool to start mapping out the customers who you're working with from beginning to end, how they sometimes do more than one thing at a time, we can change our communications. We can make our public relations more impactful. Here's the other good news. Almost everyone who responded earlier said PR is at the top of the funnel. You ever feel like when you're talking with your stakeholders or your agencies that PR is the redheaded stepchild of the marketing world? Smallest budgets, least respect, a lot of heads nodding. The reason for that is because of the funnel. Oh, you're just at the top of the funnel. There's no ROI for you, so we're going to give you the smallest budget possible and hope that you do something impactful. And just keep sending those impressions numbers. What does public relations do? We build awareness, we build trust. Two qualities, right? We build awareness and trust. Look at the customer journey map. Think about these different channels: display advertising, social media, organic search. What does public relations, what does awareness and trust impact? It can impact advertising by making us more likely to click on ads for brands we know and trust. It can help social media, paid and unpaid. When people search for our brand names, if we've done our job building awareness and trust, they'll search for us by name. We obviously get referrals in the form of media hits. We help create the content for email marketing. And we even help with paid search. So instead of being relegated to the top of the funnel, the smallest budget, we can showcase that public relations is about awareness and trust. Awareness and trust touches many parts of the customer journey. And oh, by the way, every one of these channels in the digital world is trackable. Every single one, you can prove direct and indirect ROI. So if you can figure out how your public relations efforts impact each of these channels, you can showcase how much money you make your stakeholders. When you look at what companies spend on marketing technology, this is an incredibly ugly, unpleasant map of all the technologies one B2B company uses. I apologize if there's anyone from PTC in the room. We have designers who can hire. Every single thing on here is impacted by awareness and trust. Every single stage. So if you change your thinking from funnel at the top of the funnel to we accelerate the customer journey, we keep the customer journey moving along, we help people who are stalled, we build awareness, we build trust. How many people have ever done a sale, worked in sales, particularly inside sales? Anyone? A few folks. Isn't it nice when you have some credible third-party articles and things that you can send to your sales prospects, reasons to talk to them? So even far down in what would have been considered the old funnel, public relations still has an impact, but we have to change our thinking. Step 2, second idea. We have to become, as a profession, data-driven. What does data-driven mean? Would anyone like to volunteer to answer? No? Okay. Data-driven means we make decisions with data first. We make decisions with data first. How many of you have been to Brainstorm recently? How many of you found the Brainstorm to be just a bunch of people shouting out ideas and past experiences? As public relations professionals, we have a tendency to rely on instinct, to rely on anecdotal data, to mirror ourselves and our own personal preferences, and to just guess a lot. Which is fine to a degree if our audience is exactly like us. But most of the time our audience is not like us. I work with one client. They have a huge Hispanic presence. It should be blatantly obvious I have no experience with being Hispanic. I don't have the experience to draw on. I don't have or any of that. But what I do have, what I can get is data. Here's an exercise. Which direction do you need to go in order to go from Reno to San Diego? Anyone? Southwest? Southwest? Anyone else? North? No, not north. For a lot of you who said Southwest, you're relying on instinct and experience. Here's Nevada, here's California, you go west. The reality is you actually go east. You go southeast. Your instinct, your intuition said California's west of Nevada.
From Reno to San Francisco.
So from Reno to San Diego, you're actually going east. That's right. When you drive your public relations programs by instinct, by guessing, you will have this experience, which is fun, right? That's a great road trip. But if you wanted to get to San Diego in less than 11 weeks' time, this is not the way to go. We have to use data, drive with data, make all of our decisions with data first. Now, we're not saying there's no place at all for instinct and intuition. What we are saying is that data has to come first. And the good news is for public relations professionals, there's a tremendous amount of data available to you for free. If you take nothing else away from this part of the presentation, go to data.gov. Almost everyone in this room is probably a taxpayer. Your tax dollars have funded one of the largest data repositories on the planet, 150,000 data sets. Some of them you need a supercomputer to digest, but that's okay. It's free. Use the data that's available. Make something out of it. Use it to guide your decisions. This also, by the way, does not preclude using the GPS to get to the wrong place, right? You still need to know where you're going. Google Maps is completely unhelpful if you don't know where you're going. But this will get you there faster. The third and most important thing that we need to do as public relations professionals is to embrace innovation. Innovation is a tricky word. Have you ever felt like this in your professional career? You come up with the same 5 answers all the time. In every brainstorm client meeting, let's have a hashtag. This is the result of a lack of innovation. Now, innovation does not mean making things up. Innovation comes from Latin, from in, which means inside, and novare, to make new. Take something old and turn it into something new. That's what innovation means. In public relations, think about what we do. We connect our clients or our companies with people who can help us talk about them. Right? That's the old idea. But we can make it new. We can make it new on Facebook and in digital advertising and in virtual reality. All of these new ways we can infuse into something old. But if we stay with just what we used to do, which is send out news releases, we feel like we're stuck. We feel like we're doing the same 5 things over and over again. How do you become innovative? A 4-step process. We learn, we experiment, we adjust, we distribute. And I remind you, you'll be able to download the slides. So learning, the first step. How many of you cook? Just for yourselves or others? Okay, this is pretty much everyone. We all like food. If you go home and you're hungry, no matter how innovative and creative you are, if you open the pantry and all you see is mac and cheese, what are you having for dinner? You're having mac and cheese, right? That's where learning is one of our biggest falling down points. Right? We don't learn. We're so busy. I got client meetings, I got briefing documents to do, I have 4 pitches, I have 3 calls to make report, and I don't have time to sit down and read. Well, guess what? If you don't, then you're perpetually going to have mac and cheese in your mental pantry. You'll only do the same things that you have always done. Commit to yourself. Whether or not your company endorses it, commit yourself to feeding your head 30 minutes a day. How many of you read blogs on a regular basis outside of your professional responsibilities? Okay, your homework for the next time we do this is that every hand in the room should be up. Because there are hundreds, if not thousands of blogs that you should be following, inside and outside your industry, the profession. Obviously, continue to read things like the PRSA blog, PR Daily, PR News, PR Newser, all those fun folks. But read other stuff. Read what's happening in supercomputing. Read what's happening in virtual reality. Expand your mind. At Shift Communications, my team has a responsibility. It's written into their job description. There's even a little time tracking code. 30 minutes a day, mandatory. You must read. You must read and demonstrate that you're reading, because fortunately the software tells you when you're reading things. You can measure software. The second step in the innovation process is to experiment. Public relations professionals are not bad at experimentation in general. We make things up all the time. That's kind of what we do. We're hired to be creative. But we don't do it in a structured fashion. What we need to do is adopt the scientific method. Come up with good questions. Define the variables in those questions. Predict, test, collect, analyze, refine our data, make new observations, and repeat the cycle over and over again. If we can be more scientific in our mindset, we can test and experiment and find things that work. The third step in the innovation process is to adjust. Once we have an idea we've proven with the scientific method, it's time for us to create recipes. Have you ever created a recipe, written one down? No, so long you cook, but you don't write a created recipe, okay? It's pretty straightforward, right? Ingredients, tools, directions. Have you ever written a recipe for work? How to send a news release, how to create a YouTube video, how to publish a Snapchat filter. If you're not creating recipes, if you're just relying on guidance, A, you're missing things, and B, you can't improve what you do. You can't make it better. Your recipes will continue to be whatever haphazard collection of things floating around in your head. Sometimes that's good, particularly after a couple of glasses of wine. You get creative. Sometimes it's bad if you need to make dinner or have someone else make the dinner for you. The last stage is to distribute, to take our proven recipe and give it to everyone in our firm, everyone in our company, everyone who has a job responsibility, and get them to cook it as well as we do, if not better. That's the path to innovation. Learn, experiment, adjust, distribute. The good news is that innovation is an awful lot like playing the violin. Every single person in this room can play the violin. We can become what I would call minimally competent in it. Right? We could saw out Happy Birthday or the holiday tune of your choice. Are any of us going to be Joshua Bell? Probably not. We don't have to be in order to play Happy Birthday at our kid's birthday party. Innovation is the same. Are any of us going to be the next Steve Jobs or Johnny Ive? No. We don't have to. We have to just do it better than our competitors do, better than our clients' brands do. That's all we need to do is be minimally competent at innovation. Right now, we're not doing it at all. So let's look at an example of this process, how it plays out. We start with the old way of doing things. We guess a lot. We have a funnel mindset. And we insist upon doing things the way we've always done them. Out of curiosity, how many people work agency side? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you have actually heard the expression, "This is the way we've always done it"? At your agency, right? That's an agency in trouble, right there. And you put your hands down. I apologize if that causes you more complications paper in your class. What would it look like if we took something and turned it into the new way of doing things? We start by learning. A couple years ago, Shift became the first, and to my knowledge, still the only Google Analytics certified partner. We became an IBM partner as well for their Watson supercomputer. Not because these things are fun. Well, they are fun for me because I'm a nerd and I have my life. But for the agency, they're a way for us to tap into much greater knowledge. We've learned about the customer journey, about the way Google is changing its data and offering its data to us. So we start by a strong foundation of learning. The next step was to experiment. And we start the experimentation cycle by asking a question. I had a question when I was writing my most recent book. How does social media sharing and SEO relate to PR? Okay. Anytime you go through the scientific process, ask yourself questions that you actually want the answers to. One of the greatest dangers we have as PR professionals is to be incurious, to simply ask the questions that our clients want us to ask, our stakeholders, our CEOs, or CMOs. When really we should be asking questions that we want the answers to. We define our variables, which are really easy to figure out in this study thing, right? We know in general that public relations follows a which standard follow? We grow our audience, we get engagement, we get people to do something, click on something, share something. So when you look at the variables here for this question, we want to know how does sharing and SEO relate to PR? Once you've got the variables defined, you have to make a prediction. So as part of this process, I made a prediction. I made a prediction that is a true or false statement. If you are making a prediction that is not a true or false statement, you're not making a prediction. You're just kind of daydreaming. True or false, social sharing drives SEO. Because we all know how to do social media programs for our clients. But is there benefit to more than one part of the company? Out of curiosity, how many people think this is a true statement? How many people think it's a false statement? Okay. What happened to everyone else? Not enough coffee? So we tested. We tested by writing our own software to talk to every social channel we could get a hold of, to look at click tracking software, to pull SEO data from multiple different SEO companies. And we collected the data. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of stuff. And we analyzed it. Here's full coverage for my company the last 30 or 60 days, I think. We're looking at, actually a little longer than that. How much was it shared on different networks? Which network had the most shares? We collected clicks, likes, comments, and then page rank, how much those individual pages contribute. Imagine being able to do this for your clients, for your stakeholders, to be able to show, hey, we got you this piece of coverage, and yeah, it's got impressions, nobody cares about this. Look at how many people have shared it. Look at how many people have clicked on it. Look at how many people commented with us. Look at how many people look at how well ranking that page is, how it's contributing to our search efforts. You analyze the data. For those of you who raised your hands and said this was false, it turns out you are correct. This is a false statement. Social sharing does not drive SEO. With a caveat, the customer journey dictates that sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, depending on where social media is in the customer journey. So we learned from our findings that it's not a bulletproof guarantee. So we go back and we refine our data. We found out social sharing drives SEO when the customer journey places social media early in the journey. That is a true statement. So you see the process. As you ask a question, you keep refining and refining until you find something that is true, and you test the living daylights out of it. We then observed to see if this is true more frequently. So we follow the scientific process to arrive at this answer. You can do this too. I guarantee you, you may not remember it depending on how much gray hair you have, but you've learned the scientific process in school. Or I apologize, sir. For those of you who are just more frequently out of school, more recently out of school, you may have seen this more recently than those of us with gray hair. Do this. Use this process. After we have an answer, we have to adjust it. We have to create that recipe. We have to expand it to see what else we can learn. There's a hierarchy of analytics. Most of the time, on the days when we can even get data, we're doing what's called diagnostic analytics. Every time you put together a client report or a briefing document or an after-action report or a PowerPoint with hideously colored slides and bar charts, you're doing diagnostic analytics. You're getting the stuff. Here's how many impressions this article got. And you're telling your client or your stakeholder, here's what happened. We started to ask ourselves, that's okay, and we can use an ugly, hideously colored spreadsheet to explain what happened. Well, what else could we be doing? We could be trying to predict what will happen, or what we should do. Google Analytics actually has some of this data for us. It tells us how to prioritize our work. If we need to get more people, grow our audience, awareness and trust, Google Analytics will let us benchmark against our peer competitors and identify how far ahead or behind we are. We want to fix the things that are broken and do more of what works. Moving up the scale, using IBM's Watson supercomputer, we took all 4,000 pieces of coverage, and instead of asking 20, 30, 40, or 50 people to read through it all manually, we had the supercomputer do it. It's an artificial intelligence. The good news, by the way, is that Skynet is not going to kill us. It's just going to show us more ads. We extracted every single entity in all of the coverage we got and scored it. Right? Reading through 4,000 articles is not fun. Watson did it in 15 seconds. Imagine how much more efficient you could be in your work if you had a supercomputer working for you. The good news is it's actually really cheap. My bill for Watson last month was 14 cents. We expanded. We've now gone from diagnostic, what happened, to starting into predicting what will happen. For the topics that get us the most coverage, the most interest from our influencers, what are they? What should we write more about? What should we pitch more about? We asked ourselves, well, we asked Watson, hey Watson, what's the personality? What's the tone of voice? How should we be talking in order to get coverage? How does our tone of voice map to what our coverage's tone of voice is? And we can line that up with psychological traits, values, needs, and fingerprint our voice, our clients' voices, our employees' voices, and the coverage voices and make them align. The last thing you want is someone who's used to publishing articles with lots of profanity and expletives, talking to somebody who's extremely conservative, right? But if you use really good supercomputing power, you can identify, I want this reporter to talk to this client. I want this client to never talk to this guy. This is in general. Because the supercomputer can analyze this for us. We are adjusting our recipe, we're expanding it. And eventually, we distribute it. We call it a scale reporting, which is shared content link evaluation. But the important thing is that we followed our own process from beginning to end, and you can too. If you have a question, how can I make my pitching work better? How can I make more people respond to my emails? Use this process and create something with technology. So we talked a lot about this future. How do we get there? How do you get there? You're going to need three kinds of people. They may all be rolled up into one person. They may be a staff of 10. But three kinds of people. The first is developers. Steve Ballmer was chairman of Microsoft, was famous for sweating profusely and chanting this on stage. But you need developers. Developers. People who can write code and talk to these supercomputers. If you don't have access to developers, you are, the boat is sailing and you are not on it. Right? No matter what company or agency you work for, if you do not have access to developers, the boat is sailing and you are not on it. The second kind of person you will need is a data scientist. Someone who is fluent in handling all this data, because we have asked you to be data-driven. I don't expect any one of you to say, you know what, I'm going to throw away a 5, 10, 25-year career PR and go back to school. But you can hire the talent. There are lots and lots of data scientists being manufactured. This is an example of a formula for predicting the distribution of content via social media, what may or may not go viral. This was done in 2013 at the University of Rochester. So, representation from the PRSA Northeast chapter. If you can't read this, don't worry, but hire someone who does. Hire someone who can understand what this formula is saying and how to make it come to life in your work. The third kind of person you're going to need are marketing technologists. These are people who can speak to developers and IT and data scientists and database folks, and speak to marketers and communicators and PR professionals and advertisers together, right brain and left brain, to be able to bring all this stuff together. Without marketing technologists as sort of the linchpin, you can hire a bunch of data scientists, but all they'll give you is an awful lot of data. But this is the blueprint to the future. We need to be, as a profession, data-driven. Make decisions with data first. We need to get rid of the funnel and adopt the customer journey. And we need to be innovative. We need to put innovation into every process we have. That's how we reinvent PR. This is the future. The future will be here sooner than you think. Thank you very much. I think we have a few minutes for questions. Questions? You'll have to stand up and yell. Come on up. Yell. Really loud.
Thank you for being we talked about media and how to understand it. We talked about
does PR and its role change? One of the things that our industry loves to talk about is earned, owned, and paid. The reality is nobody cares outside of this room, right? Think about it in your own experience. When you're scrolling through your Facebook feed, do you care whether it's brand content, third-party content, or a sponsor post? Or do you care that it's going to entertain you or be educational? Right? All you really care about is what the media is going to do for you as a consumer. So, should PR be approaching an integrated communications approach? Yes, absolutely. Without question, I would say if you're not already doing that, you're in some trouble. Because without knowing how content gets amplified and distributed, all we're doing is adding to that pile of 65 million news stories that nobody reads. Out of curiosity, and again, because I have no life, I took 80,000 press releases that have been published in the last year, and I fed them to the same supercomputer. You know what the average sharing rate was? 0. Nobody cared. We were doing releases on the wire every single day. Nobody cares. Nobody reads them. The machines handle them. Machines read them. And machines regurgitate them. But not a single human laid eyes on it. And certainly nobody cared enough to actually share the thing. So, do we need more than just earned media? Absolutely. Next question. You have to by usage, and the usage requires you to consume tremendous amounts of data. IBM is used to handling terabytes of data. They're used to handling entire libraries being dropped on them all at once. So for us to put 5,000 press releases once, it's like, I'm sorry, something happened. So, and the billing rate, as I mentioned, was 14 cents. I would hope that even sole practitioners can find 14 cents somewhere in their house for us. In terms of manpower and resources, that's the harder question to answer, but it comes down to that learning, that willingness to commit that 30 minutes a day. If you're not willing to or not able to, then you're going to have to partner up. You're going to have to find somebody else who does that sort of thing. Mike from Shareable Metrics, who's in the back of the hand, Mike, builds tools very similar to a lot of these things because that's what he likes doing. He doesn't particularly like doing public relations. So there are people like that. There's companies like Signal Labs who do a lot of real-time computing. There is somebody who will fill that gap. It's just a question of whether you are willing to put the time or the resources to do it. Most of the sponsors here today have solutions as well with some kind of technology. So pick the channel, the tools that you want to use, and learn. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. What blogs do I personally read every day? I scan through about 1,500 a day in 14 different topic areas because I use an app called Feedly. So I give it a whole bunch of stuff, and I say what stuff is trending that I should read first, and then just keep going through until I run out of time. I don't ever get through all 1,500 every day, but I get the stuff that's trending fastest, because that's typically what's going to impact the industry first. Like this morning, there was a piece on binomial regression analysis that was fairly important for people who are into statistics. If you're not, it's not important, but it's one of those things that just pops up and you're like, okay, I should save that for later. One of the things you should definitely do is install an app like Feedly or Pocket on your smartphone. We as modern day people tend to be not very productive when we could be incredibly productive. If you've ever had 5 minutes after a meeting, or 15 minutes, or if you ride public transportation, those are the times when you can sneak in 5 or 6 articles and read through this stuff and skill up and make the most of your day. Most of us burn those 5 minutes getting coffee or something when we could be using small fragments of time together. Next question. Yes, ma'am. So the question was, what are the top 3 metrics we should be looking at? That's kind of a loaded question because it varies widely from industry to industry. The number one answer to that is look at key performance indicators. The definition of a key performance indicator is if this number goes to 0, you're fired. Right? So what number is that? For some of us who are in marketing or sales, that number is closed deals. If we're in public relations, what is the client paying for? They're paying for awareness and trust. How would they measure that? Some clients, they say it's social media, like we want to see followers. Hey, you're paying me for followers, I will give you followers. Other clients are like, I want to see attributed revenue. I want to see you use Google Analytics, IBM Watson, and the CRM, and put all the pieces together, map out the journey, and show me the impact across different channels. So it's dependent on what you are being held accountable to. I would say though, and it's a good question to press a client or a stakeholder or an executive. What numbers for you, if the number goes to 0, we go out of business or you get fired and then you fire me. If they can't answer that question, then you can obviously work backwards up the chain until you figure out who does have the answer. Most of the time it's going to come down to dollars. Right? Are you helping make more money? Are you helping us do more with the stuff that we have? Yes, sir, at the back.
You said some scary things for colleges and universities. In public relations and communications, you talk to cover little to none of data science, marketing technology, and development skills. So where do you go to recruit people working at your area?
So I think the question was about how people in universities should be looking now.
Yes,
As far as these other skills. Okay. The good news is that the amount of training that's available, even for free online, is larger than it's ever been. There are terrific courses from companies like Google and Facebook and stuff that will help you get skilled up on any one of those 3 areas. If you want a good starting point, every public relations practitioner in this room should have gone through Google's Analytics Academy. Go to analyticsacademy.withgoogle.com. That's analyticsacademy.withgoogle.com. If you can't even read web analytics, you're going to have a hard time justifying what you do. But if you can read web analytics, you can start tying it back to things like the customer journey, you're going to be much, much smarter than the average bear in public relations. That's the first place to start. There are companies that offer really, really low courses like Udemy and Coursera and all these different course companies. Look for things that would be of interest to you. There are a decent number of courses for free. Try one out. See if you can get your head into it. If you enjoy it, you may find that you have an unknown aptitude, an undiscovered aptitude. The thing about these fields, particularly marketing technology, is that they're so new. Universities don't have courses in them. Your employers probably don't have any courses in them. So it's incumbent upon you to either become that person or find that person in an organization who has the aptitude and the attitude to be left brain and right brain. That's where we're going as a profession. We used to be a profession entirely of right brain creative people. And now we have to be as analytical as we are creative. And together, those two skills make us unstoppable. Other questions? All right, thank you very much.